fire, I'm chasing ghosts. I'm like an outcast from pillar to post, hitting you up, but I'm stuck on hold. Is it really a bad reception out there? Where you heading? Why ain't gravity pulling you in closer to me? Yeah, I lost you, but I need you, and you're off my radar now. I lost you, yeah, I lost you, telling you that I need you, but you're off my radar now. I lost you, I lost you.
So, good evening. Welcome to today's stream. Also today, game day, of course, based on my shirt you can see. Today, the mighty Real Madrid plays, right? Against Atletico. And I'm pretty confident. I mean, we don't play at home, but for everybody that has seen the Supercopa de España, right? How we won against Barcelona was pretty insane. I would say that was pretty good. And even the match against Atletico was also good. Hi Elir. Wow, derby, yeah. How is it going? I mean, we chatted already earlier, but I hope you're enjoying the Swiss chocolate. So, how do we get started? By generating a new signal inputs. That's a pretty boring name for the repository. It's gone already. Nice. Signal in whatever. I usually like to have pretty cool names, but I mean, probably it's better like this because then I can find it later on. Because sometimes I use repo names and I cannot find the repo any longer. Hi Chaos Monster, how is it going? So signal inputs, we create a repository. And now so it should be released in 17.1, I think, right? Angular, I think Angular, that's the name, which is cool. Hi, welcome everybody to the stream. So yeah, 17.1 should have, and I start stream. Signal inputs. That's what we want. So npx and Angular CLI latest new signal inputs. Yeah, that's good. 17.1 is what we want. It's perfect. So let's see. SAS, no server-side rendering. Somehow I always generate without server-side rendering. I don't know if you guys do the same, but yeah. I saw two observable signal pattern today on Twitter in relation to input signals. Really? You are scared to see that? Why? Because I find it pretty cool. Like I often come up with one example of, let me show you. I usually come up with this example here. So let me first push that and then we will go and show you the example. Signal inputs, that was my branch or my repo. So let's go here, let's push that. And then what I want to show you is basically, I want to go one directory up. I don't know if you've already seen it, maybe you've already seen it. But I kind of like that we have the option to use RxJS where it makes sense. So I usually come up with this example of a GitHub user search, right? So in a GitHub user search, what you have there is you have a lot of criteria, right? You only want to fire a request if the user types didn't type for 200 milliseconds. So if you do this, you don't want to fire tons of requests. You want to cancel outgoing requests because you have no control. So if you fire one and you fire the next one, and the first one takes longer than the second one, you will display wrong data. And also you want to display filter, loading states, and so on. And for those cases, you need kind of RxJS. I don't know how you would implement that without RxJS. And therefore, I think it's pretty cool that you can do stuff like this. I don't know if it's big enough. Let me bump the font even a bit further. So let's go to 18. I think it's cool that you can then basically say, well, so I think in the JetBrains webinar or somewhere I said it, or I like to think about it like this, that you walk down a street, right? On the left side you have the RxJS land, or even like RxJS shops. And on the right side you have the Signal shops, and you can take advantage of whatever you need. So you come down the Signal street and then you see, well, now I basically need all those RxJS power like debounce, time tap, switch map, and so on. So I go to the other street by calling toObservable. I pick from the shop whatever I need, like picking candies, right? And then probably I want to drop in again to local change detection, and then when we have Signal components to Signals. So I call to Signal here again. I kind of like that. A component that needs to call a backend based on its input. I don't know if I could consider that a good pattern, as it breaks with smart dumb components. Yeah, true. That's true. I agree with you, Chaos Monster Bear. I agree with you, yeah. Because usually when you split in smart and dumb components, what you usually do, the dumb components only gets data as input. I agree there, yeah. But then imagine a scenario where you have like a route, and the route fetches, for example, data based on input. Because we have now the component input binding, which means that the route, basically the input of the route becomes a signal, and then you can fetch data and pass it down to dumb components. So that should be still a good pattern, I think. That's what Ilya wrote, some URL state. Yeah. So, documents, code, private, signal inputs. Cool, so we have the project, signal inputs, and this small spoiler is the first time I will ever use signal inputs in my life. So I have never used it, I just saw the idea behind it, but this is the first time. So what I think would be cool if we could basically have a component counter minus standalone, and then I think it's, oh god, I never can remember like the -s inline style, -t inline template. So probably -s, -t, -c, and that will be on push, something like that. So we have that counter component. Nice, here. Counter component, which we add to the imports array here. We go up, we delete, we say app counter. So cool. Counter works, right? Now this is super bright. It would be cool. Actually, it would be cool if Angular had like dark mode out of the box. I would like that. I don't know about you, but I would actually that would be cool, like a dark mode. Let's also use some nice I like this font somehow. I discovered it and I somehow like it. So this is not even an H1. So let's go here quickly, use H1 and then cool. Good, so we have our counter component which works. So now let's say what we would want to do is probably, let's say you have a counter, which is not a good name because I want to have this basically as a double count component, so rename the stuff. Oh my god. So we have a double count and probably we should also rename the selector. So we have our app double count and basically what it does, it takes add input counter, right? So I first want to start with like the old approach, how we do it today, so that we can see the benefit of having single inputs. So let me quickly catch up with the chat. If then it's all preference, I hope for example form controls that expose the signals. Yeah, so I agree there that the intent is basically that RxJS should be used where it actually makes sense, and I think from my experience a lot of apps got overcomplicated because RxJS was used way too much. So I have been in apps that were over-streamified, which adds so much complexity for testing and everything. And I think the Angular team already made it clear or mentioned once that they can envision a future that is even where RxJS is even optional. So yeah, so we would basically display a double count, and what we want to do here is double count, right? So we want to display that. Now, in traditional way, how would you do that? So you have a counter, right? And probably what we could do is something like this. Either we come and we do implement. So we can either do this as a setter. Let's first explore our options here. So that would be set counter, and there we get a C, which is just a number. Seed. And then basically what we want to do is we would have here a double count, which is the one we display here. And then what you do here is this.double count is equal to C times 2. So let's go up, and I'm not even sure that this worked with the proper change detection. Counter, counter, and then what we have here is a button to increment. Same for decrement. No. How did we call it? Count or counter? We called it counter. So if you do that, we have two buttons which are super beautiful, but we can see how now our double count works, right? So basically we have a double count that works, but what we needed to do is we needed to have this setter. So this is a pattern that we often needed. Now, another solution that you could do is you could say implement on changes. So let's quickly go with, this would be kind of like solution 1. And then solution 2 would be that you have add input counter, right? Then you implement on changes. And then what you would do, you have a double count, and inside here, if changes that counter, I think this is probably even like changes dot, is it, how is it with simple changes? It's current, something like that. Let me see. I always forget this. Let's quickly log the changes. Actually, it's changes to counter. So why are you not happy? So it has to be accessed like this. So now we basically have the same behavior, right? So we have those two approaches. So either we go with a setter, or we go with a ng changes lifecycle. Let me quickly remove the implement, just that our code is still compiled, but it doesn't compile if I comment it out as well. Now let's say, how does the world look like if we have signal inputs? So we would have a counter which is equal to input. I think it's like this, and we start with a value of 0. And then we can say a double count is a computed, and since this is a signal input, of course we then have to call the double count. We can already use it like this, and we can see how our counter works. Also, I see that it's actually below the Angular logo. So what we will do, we will quickly go to styles, add some margin top on the body of like 50 pixels, or better go with a padding, so that this a bit comes down so you can see it better. But how cool is that? Like, if you compare those two approaches, so either you go with a setter, and trust me, I had that in a lot of UI libraries, then you basically always have to generate like a extra property somehow. But yeah, this is just not so cool. This is also not so cool, and this is super cool. What you can see here already is basically when we have signal-based components and signal inputs, there is actually no need for ng changes anymore. So ng changes, I guess, will just disappear in the future. So let me quickly check on the chat, on the studio. Cool, I see that you have quite some discussion there. I just realized that input signals and toObservable technically solve a really old feature request issue on GitHub that asked for observable. Yeah, exactly. So observable inputs was basically something that the Angular community was asking for like quite some time, and now this kind of solves it. That's kind of like reactive inputs, right? It's so much cleaner. Yeah, I also like this. So now let's see how we can make this required. I think the syntax here is required, and then you have to pass in basically what it is. And then when you do required, I don't know, then you don't start with initial value or type 0 has no properties in common with type input options without transform. So you go like this then. And then basically, since it's required, actually makes sense. Since it's required, you don't really need to pass in an input because you will get the input from the parent, right? And now we can see how the IDE complains that basically is not provided. Why? Because I would expect that the IDE complains if I take this away, that he then says that this should be provided. I mean, let's see. Signal input, support type. Input as required. So this should actually work, right? Input as required, number. Getting rid of those setters feels already so good, yes. And I think the team said that onPush will be zoneless first thanks to input signals and signals in general. I think the zoneless will come once you get like the signal-based components, which means you will, I don't know if the API will be like this, but once you have like a property here, signal true, that basically means that it kind of drops out from the normal change detection that we know today. I'm still curious why this doesn't work. So counter, I don't know, isn't it really working, or is just the IDE not yet ready, right? Because that could be possible. And now that's cool. You saw that. Here it tells us required input counter must be specified. So actually it's all working. It's just the IDE that is not yet there. So I somehow feel for those IDE guys at this moment because they have like a really hard time keeping up with Angular, because Angular drops changes, and new features. But that's basically how you can use the required one. I guess what I don't like so much is now like that required basically is in front here. So you use required there. But from what I've seen, if you want to alias, you use it here as my number, whatever. And then basically now it should complain that there is no counter input, but it must be my number. So I'm not so happy, my number, and then again it starts working, right? So I'm not so happy that basically required is put here in front, but the rest is not. Also, how would you do that if this is not required? Again, I'm just exploring here a bit. I guess like that, right? Yeah, that's cool. Good. So we have required. Now I'm curious. Now they said V2 of the plan is to go first zoneless for onPush and then introduce a true. Yeah, true, I remember that. True, you are right. Zoneless is like a high priority for them, yeah. Yes, exactly, that was on a stream. They had a slide where they showed it. Yeah, you are absolutely right. Zoneless is like one of the highest priority, because I was also, what I just said was how I always thought it's first signal and backwards compatibility, but yes, I remember that slide. You're 100% correct. So what I'm curious now, what if we do this transform and we say we have a transform function? Can we do that inline? I don't know. I don't think so. Double it. I think we have to do something like that. Function double it. Yes, exactly. So like this, it takes transform. Quickly have to check how I wrote a blog post and I don't know how it's used anymore. You saw previously required was in here, and I would kinda have liked that it's unified. So I would kinda like that required is also here as an option. I mean, I don't mind this syntax, I kinda like it. What I don't like is that required is here and the rest of the option isn't, so that's what I don't like. Or is this chainable? I don't think that you can say then alias or whatever. So what I want to use is transform number attribute, those are the built-in ones, boolean attribute, those are all built-ins. Don't I have like a here transform, yes, function. So we have a function double it, which takes in a number. I mean, if it's required or not, it doesn't matter. But what is the problem like? I don't know. Maybe it's just TypeScript. Whatever. So let's say that here we display the counter. And this breaks. Of course. How did we call it? We called it counter. Yes. So both work, right? So for me the question is now for you in the chat, like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer basically having this? Let's call this double count, alias counter, and then basically you double it, or do you prefer this, where you have basically the computed? Because that should actually be kind of the same, right? I'm just curious, like, this could be a nice nice tweet also. To compute the double count, and here we say using basically that's approach 1, and this one would be approach 2. Add another type. I think I prefer the transform when I don't need to original value. Okay. That's interesting. I thought most people will say that they prefer the computed. It requires, so you mean, wait quickly, Ilir, so that I get what you're speaking about, because I'm not fully sure if I understand, but I guess you mean this one, so that I don't need the as any, right? It requires 2 when using transform function, add second type param. And which one would that be? Because I think that kind of worked, like if I just use the normal approach where I say add input counter and I use transform, then it works. So basically here on the normal, on the old approach, it's all good, but somehow on the new one not. But I still want to quickly post that on Twitter because I kind of like it. I want to see what people like. I'm curious. So whenever I post, I created this small thing called under products. So here under Angular Experts products, we do not only have like paid products, we have a bunch that are paid, like our books, the component library start to the Skull, but there is also like a lot of free stuff like ng parcel and stuff is free, right? Yeah, the cool thing also about what I also like about the transform approach is testing. If you export that function, you could easily test its dedicated logic, but you have to export it. And it's a question if you want to do that, but you could actually take out the logic there and easily test it. So this is a product I built that basically allows you to highlight code with Skull. So basically I created this Skull theme. It's the theme that I'm using to program in the IDE, and this one is basically a small web app. It's still not fully, I think I should optimize it that it takes the width based on the code and stuff, but and also add a tweet button and so on, but there's a lot of stuff to do, right? So input number. Okay, let me quickly ask the question on Twitter and then we will check if that works. What do we write? Hey Angular devs. Playing around with signal inputs on stream. If you double count from a count input, you have two nice options. Which one do you prefer? Something like that. So I'm curious what people will do there, right? So, okay, back to, let's say we just have, okay, let's see. So we have the new syntax and you say here I have to do number. Oh, wow. Nice. So basically this is the return type of the function, I guess. So if I would change that to string, then probably it complains that we here should return a string. Okay. Okay, cool. I was not aware of that. Okay, cool. So that's very nice. Now let's probably add some routes. So let's say we want to have a new component. Oh no, not here. Whatever. NGC to do item. Yeah, whatever. Let's generate a to-do item, but let's do it under features. Features to-do item. So we still started. Boom, features to-do item. Add routes. So we add a fresh route. Not like, oh no. Path. To-do item, and then we say component, and that's wrong, that's the load component, and that's to do item, and that's completely wrong. Okay, so to do item and that's under features. Something like that. And then we add a path, which is just empty path match. Oh my god. I went to the office in now a couple of days, and somehow I kind of don't use my keyboard in the office, and then I have a bit of harder time getting back on track with my keyboard. So cool. App component. Let's quickly uncomment that. Actually, it would be cool to have it nice in a GitHub repository, to have it as a dedicated component so that you can then route to the different components, but whatever. So we still have some error. Yeah. So that should now look better, and we get the to-do item which works. So now, what I want to do is basically speak a bit about inputs. So let's say we have an input which is to-do ID, or let's just call it ID, which is just a, let's go with the string. This one, yeah, we don't need to go with the old approach. So ID equals input require, just number. I think somehow I like this, because with the old one I kind of had to deal more with TypeScript. I think if I say ID and then I basically start with, I just say it's a number or a string, right? And I had to do like required true. In this case I know it is there, I know it will be there, but what I still needed to do, I still needed to add the exclamation mark, which I here don't have to do. So that's kind of cool. So let's go to the appconfig.ts, and let's say we want to have the router, and we want to use with component input binding basically. So the component input binding now binds this to the route item, basically to the signal. So we can say ID, and we would go here and we would go to do item. But before we do that, app routes to do item slash, yeah, double point ID slash to do item slash 1. So we get a 1 here, right? Which is cool. So now let's say, and I think that's exactly the pattern that you guys were speaking about. Let's make a backend request here. So let's go and first generate a quick backend. To do so, we just do a db.json. And inside here we have to-dos. In this to-dos array, we have a first to-do with an ID of 0, and what we have here is text learn React, whatever. That shouldn't be. Now do the second one. Copilot. Where are you? Learn Redux, whatever, let's do 2. learn React Native. Now we open up another terminal, we say npx JSON server db JSON, and we should get that sweet backend under to-dos. If we do /todos/1, we get the one with 1, right? And now here, basically what we could do is we could say, usually I would do it probably in core, I just do it here, to-dos, or let's do it in core. Let's be correct. Core, new scratch file, new file, to-dos.service.ts, injectable, providing root, export class, blah blah. Private HTTP equal inject HTTP client. Let's say we have a const backend URL, which is this. Then we say get to-dos return /todos. That makes all sense. Now we go back here. And now whenever this changes, we want to basically fetch data, right? So we could just trigger that with an effect, but if we also want to take the data and pass it then to a DOM component, so here this would be our smart component, we could pass it down to a DOM component, but we can also just, for the moment, we can still do a computed, and we call it a to-do. So we import computed and we say probably to-do service didn't I call it to-do service? To-do's service. That would be okay, the ID is a number, so here is a number. I think it's a string actually that comes from the URL. I think you need an effect as computed cannot be async. I mean, let's try, but I think a computed can also be async, but let's see. So what we do here is we call to-do and we use the JSON type. I mean, I'm also not sure, right? So we will figure it out. So let's see here, we go to /to-do item /1 and we get no provider for HTTP client. Yes, that makes perfect sense because we did not provide the HTTP client here. To-do item 1 and we get to-do item works source whatever, because I did something. Maybe you are right. So let's see, because we did a network request, right? I guess so. So if we refresh the page and we check the XHR, so this returns an observable, and of course this is an observable. So do we have to do here a toSignal? how would you, because we need to write it somewhere, but I don't think this is gonna work, right? I mean, usually what we do here, we just return like normal values. Yes, effects are meant to... I agree with you guys, but the thing is, I'm still kind of producing a new value, right? So, I mean, let's first go with let's do the effect approach. So let's say what we would do here, we would do an effect. And then you would probably do this. So you get that. Basically now this is an observable. And then you do toSignal, I guess. Or what do you do? Do you do a subscribe here? No. So we want to have a signal. So it would be so easier if toSignal, and now basically this signal we need to assign to something that is called todos, which is just a because do I do it like this? Todos, and then I say that this is basically just a signal of any whatever, and then here you would assign it list of todos, and then probably what you need to have is this option allow signal writes through, and then here we even have to say like this. We call it to do. ctx.todo. The toSignal will return first a signal with no value, yes. So there we should also have, that's on the effect. So here basically we would need to have, since this is an async observable, what you would need is initial value null. But that probably is still not the way to go. So, but the toSignal will return first a signal with no value and update once the subscribe next. But then the computed already updated. I'm not sure if this... So this to do toSignal to observable, yeah. But why to observable? Because this is already returning an observable, right? This get to do. And therefore I thought, because basically what you're doing, right? You're getting a new value. So with an effect, I agree that an effect can do side effects. But what the thing is that you actually get a new value back. I'm not sure what you mean. You want to convert the input ID into... Because the input ID is just I mean, that's just a value, right? That's just a string that gets out, which you pass in here. Yeah, I see what you mean, that my code overrides it. That there I agree. But what you can do, I mean, I can also do like signal null, right? So then I start with a signal, and which is a writable signal. But then what do I do here? I still have to take that value somehow out. So basically, I mean, the easiest way. Let's go first with the easiest way, and then we can kind of see what we can do. So for me, the easiest way is basically subscribe. And then inside the subscription, you would do this .todo, .set, and you would set the value, right? Yeah, which can be any. I mean, I don't care now about that. And then you basically get it, right? Learn Redux. But then you also need allow signal writes. And this, I mean, it works. But I was thinking, is there another way? Because what we are actually doing is, we basically produce new values, right? Because we would use a computed if we don't have the service here. If we don't use a service, we would actually use a computed. So the same as we do previously, if we would just want to double count that, we would use a computed because we produce a new value. And I'm just thinking, do we have to use an effect because we use a service? Therefore, I was basically trying this. You know what I mean? But I'm not sure, like, but it's fun to explore. So let's see. So let's say we would have it like this. I mean, let's see. Let's see if we remove the allow signals, right? You are right. You are completely right. That's not needed. That's cool. That's cool. That makes sense. But still, if I could do it. So basically, what is a computer doing? It returns a value. I mean, in a computer itself, yeah, true. Because here you cannot really get like, can you return a signal inside a computed, or is it just returning values? I think it's just returning values, right? What if you do this? What if we try this? Exactly. What if we try this? To signal, right? And we just call it. Doesn't work. Okay, invoking toSignal causes new subscriptions. Consider moving toSignal outside of the reactive context. Yeah, so you cannot call toSignal inside of computed. Because the other thing I don't like that I still subscribe and then just push it into a signal. Somehow it feels like not so cool. What about something like, okay, now I'm curious, Chaos Monster, maybe you get like some cool idea. But also this I was not aware, toSignal you cannot use inside here. Yeah, sure, sure, no problem. Because this would be cool to have a clean approach for this. Because now the only way that I see so far is what you guys did, or the simplest approach that we could came up with, which is to subscribe. So I guess you're still typing or. Yeah. So this was the one that we got working. Yeah, the question is about and how would you pass the ID? How would you pass the ID to the backend request? Like double computed this backend request, yeah, you would execute that, which is to signal, yeah. But yeah, still, the ID is the question. Because I think if we would just do like... Yeah, that's... Check mine above. At the end, return it to a signal with two signals. In which example were we still in this one, or were you speaking about the computed? The switch map is definitely work. Okay, let's try. So let's see as the easiest way. We'll do it. Yeah, cool. And then use the signal. But I get like, so you would do like backend request is equal to signal this. Yeah, I still don't see it because here, like I see how it would work if we don't have the ID, but I don't see how you bring the updated value, because that's happening later, right? I think the ID is only available inside Enjoin init. But maybe. But then it's again the question, do you override or what do you do? What if we take that away? We do a because I don't want to subscribe. That's the whole point. Somehow I don't want to subscribe. I know it works with subscribe. And maybe that's not even like reasonable to just be like so strict to not want to subscribe. That's just because previously was always this credo of like we should always use the async pipe, right? And subscription are bad in your code, but maybe it is not. I mean this. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. How would you combine those two together? So I still don't see like a proper way. Yeah, I'm curious about the not subscribe, because what I don't like about the subscription is that you need to handle it, right? So basically we have signals which has we have signals which have automatic dependency tracking. So what we still would need to do is we would need to take until destroy inside here, right? I think that's the code we would need to write to be properly and then take until destroy can only be called within an injection context. So the effect is not really an injection context, but I think we can give it the injector, and then what we have to do is we have to say private injector injector this dot injector, and then still not. I thought this does it, but it doesn't. So what we have to do then is take the destroy ref, inject destroy ref, and take it and pass it to this operator, right? And now it works. Yes, you are right. The HTTP request is auto-completing because it's basically firing once. But if it would be, yeah, that's true. So in this scenario, we would not need it. So I guess that's probably the way to go, right? How would the situation change? I honestly understand more and more why people argue that the HTTP request is better as promise. Yeah. I mean, it is actually a promise, right? The only cool thing about having it as an observable is that you can easily use the switch map and the merge map. But you could even, if you get back a promise, you could create like 2 observable from promise, or I think the operator is called from promise, which converts it to an observable. Then you can use the piping operators. But I never understood it. But also, would the situation change if our service would return a signal? Let's think about that. So then we would get a get to do signal. Yeah, it doesn't. Nah, that doesn't really change. Yeah, so I guess that's the way to go. Maybe somebody comes up with a better solution even. Okay, let's again go back to our app component, and let's again take away the router outlet, but also actually this one. And I want to see like one more thing, which is called like let's call this component checkbox. Yeah, exactly. So for this kind of stuff, I anyway find the 10 stack, like the Angular adapter of the 10 stack is pretty cool, the Angular query. I think that's a pretty neat one. I really like that one. So we did this checkbox. And what I want to try, because what I've also seen is something called a model input. So let's first see if this works. Are we still in use? App checkbox, maybe we should use it inside the HTML. So checkbox works. And now let's see on the checkbox component, we have like a checked which is a model, which they don't have yet. Okay, so that doesn't seem to be there. No. The idea of a model is basically that you get two-way binding, so that you can basically inside your child component, or let's put it that way. The difference is with an input signal, you get a signal, and with a model input, you would get a writable signal. That's the idea. Need to get something to eat, enjoy the stream. Yeah, see you. Thanks for participating, Chaos Monster. Wish you a nice evening and hope to see you soon. So, checkbox works, right? Yeah, I guess it's basically everything that we wanted to find out. So this is probably still the pattern that you will have to use. I mean, we will also again go on Twitter and ask and maybe see if people have like some idea. Yeah. So let's see. Pum. Downloads. That was the one. Family. Is there a way to achieve this without having to subscribe? Maybe there is. Maybe we get Chow or somebody. Check this gist, man. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but basically the HTTP request fires once and then completes, so it should automatically clean up once you subscribe there, right? Are we gonna make signals async and Angular or die trying? Let's see. Ilir, which gist do you refer to? Because I don't know, I don't see it in the chat. Not sure if you pasted it or if I missed it. Let's quickly see what people were saying about just seen your repo 1 hour ago and added signal input. Yeah, maybe it's not coming because maybe YouTube will just not allow you to paste some links, right? But you can quickly write me on Twitter. I will not open it on the stream, I will open it on a different tab where nobody can see it. So just DM me there and then basically I can open it there. Because I'm curious if you have found something. Yeah, nice. And here we go. Perfect. So you do basically you have the input required, you do toSignal, toObservable, the ID, then you pipe it. So basically I mean that should make sense, I guess. Switch map, so that would be just I, let's just call it I, right? Of course, we have to go to the app component and add the router outlet again, and then slash to do item slash one, and that works. We have some, I mean that's nice, but I still don't know, or where I'm not so happy is basically I mean it's cool, we don't have to subscribe. Let me think about it. For me it's super cool on one hand, on the other hand I think like we get signal inputs so that we can nicely use computed and effects, and then we go and we convert it to an observable. It's kind of like, but yeah, it's cool. I mean, but then basically it's more in my head probably that this somehow feels better because I'm trained to not use to subscribe. But is it really, like, if I forget about that, is it really cooler and more readable than having effect? And I'm not saying like you did a great job there, I'm just thinking which one I would prefer to use. And then here you would do basically the dot whatever update. Because also the kind of complexity that we have is the same, so this take until destroyed again, probably don't need that here, but we could, even if we do it here, we have to do it here as well. I'm not sure. You can use computed from function. So what is the computed from? That's something from that Chow did in the INEA. I have to check that. I'm not sure what the best practice here is, so I'm curious what people will tell us on Twitter. I will also probably post it in the GD chat to see what the best practice there will be. Yeah. But I think it's pretty cool, the signal input. It looks pretty amazing. So I think we checked everything that I wanted to check. Let me see, because I wrote down some ideas that we want to check. Yeah, we checked the basic API, we checked fetching. Okay, another thing would be a directive, but that should work. Yeah, I think that's good. So I'll probably finish the stream here because it's actually about time, yeah. So then, yeah, let's wrap it up here. So let's see. Yeah, thanks Ilir for these great ideas and the participation on the stream. And I hope that the script still works. Hope that it saves you some time. And for all the others in the stream, we today quickly. I mean, this is not really a finished script or something, but I released today the inject pilot, which is something that allows you to migrate your Angular constructor dependencies to just inject. And also look at the description, I didn't put like much effort in. I was just doing it in this morning because I had to run it on a big repository, and therefore I didn't want to put like polish it, put all the stuff that I usually do, like the proper license, like the all contributors and all this stuff. I just published it as an npm package, as simple as possible. Here's the code, it's 118 lines of code or something. So, and it uses ngMorph behind the scenes, which is a pretty cool project. The base of the thing, I mean, even ngMorph, that's also why I was pretty quick with it, because ngMorph actually has, on the documentation, they even have like an example, inject to inject migration, right? So I took that as the base, and I added some more things to it, because what the script was not doing was, for example, the handling of optional skip self and all this kind of stuff. So I added that additional, and yeah, cool. Okay, so then let's wrap it up. Hope to see you soon, and thanks everybody for joining. Root for Real Madrid this evening, and have a great evening. See ya.